Thank you for joining us. William Sila is our sign language interpreter tonight.
The government has remained mum on the death and suffering of residents of Owino Uhuru slums due to lead poisoning after an expose by KTN.
Kenyans on social media piled pressure on the government to take action on those behind the metal refinery company which exposed the residents to lead poisoning.
To the affected residents, however, the expose Futari ya Sumu and Plague for Profit by KTN's Muhammad Ali and John Allen Nam was given them a voice.
Baada ya mwezi 8 nikampeleka hospitalini akapimwa. Kapatikana ni mgonjwa. Baada alikuwa anagonjeka tu mpaka akaenda.
The KTN expose Futari ya Sumu by Muhammad Ali and Plague for Profit by John Alanamu detailed the suffering of children, women, men, and even livestock in Owino Uhuru slums in Changamwe, Mombasa County. The suffering of a community dealing with the effects of lead poisoning. A community that has buried several of its children. A voiceless community still seeking redress after exposure to lead by the metal refinery company, which chose to make profits at the expense of the lives of locals. A day after the expose first aired, more tales of suffering.
Na mjukuu wangu alidhirika mpaka dakika hii, bado nashughulika na bado kumpatia matibabu.
And as children in Owino Uhuru slums play, too young to understand the complexities of lead processing and the fact that exposure to lead may have changed their lives for the worst forever. To the residents, the investigative piece by KTN gave them a ray of hope.
Hiyo taarifa jana actually imeangalau imetusaidia sana in an angle that ile kitu nimehisi kumbe tunatambulika. Tumeumia kwa muda mrefu, almost over 6 years.
With the unscrupulous operations of the metal refinery company now exposed, residents want some action taken against those behind the company.
Wangeangalia wale watu ambao walichangia kuleta ule mtambo pale, pamoja na yule mtu ambaye aliweka huo mtambo hapo, wapate kushikwa wale watu.
They also want more than just action on those who have brought them untold suffering.
Ziko mbinu nyingi. Kama serikali inawezekana ije na mbinu kutuhamisha katika sehemu. Kama imeshindikana kiwanda kubaki hapa, basi wahamishe wakaje hiyo sehemu, watafutwe sehemu nyingine ardhi mbadala.
Serikali itusaidie tujue kwamba hii shida tunaweza kuimaliza namna gani.
It should compensate us on health wise. Secondly, in our premises, mali tunapoishi, manyumba zote zina matundu, unaweka mabati mpya inatoboka just because of moshi.
The government remained mum on the issue as the residents continue to wait, holding on to hope that something will be done to end their suffering. Rita Tinina, KTN.
If you live in Nairobi, then you must still be recovering from the effects of the heavy overnight downpour. Well, the county government of Nairobi is assuring you that there's an emergency team on standby to assist you if the rains continue. I'm sure you'd have wanted a guarantee that the team has embarked on repairing the poor drainage system. Let's find out from KTN's Sharon Momanyi.
After months of Kenyans praying for the rains, it pours. And Nairobi, a name known to mean a place of cool waters, is now virtually a place of lots of water. Heavy rains was witnessed in the city Sunday evening, starting at about 5 p.m. and pouring endlessly for about 6 hours, then more into the night. The rain itself not a problem, in fact, perhaps a blessing. The curse would be that the water in many places has nowhere to drain into.
The digging of the drainage system is in small width rather than being in a big width whereby the water can go very easily. At the same time, if you look at this point here, now this is the blockage of the drainage system, which of course is coming as a result of untidy.
It's very embarrassing. Kwa maybe parking kama hii, kuna watu wengi wamekuja leo, wamekosa mahali pa kupaki magari zao. Kama mimi hata unaona funguo zangu ndo hizi, nimekuja nafaa kuingia kazini by 8 na sasa natafuta parking bado. So I think the bathing
City Council wanafaa kufanya jambo.
The heavy rains resulted in traffic snarl-ups on major roads within the city center and suburbs. Incidents and accidents, as often follows downpours, would be cited in various places. Places that were reported to be worst hit by the flash floods include South Sea, Kilimani, Parklands, and Imara Daima. Astonishing photos depicting the seriousness of the floods made rounds on social media, some using a touch of sarcasm to highlight the situation. South Sea, for instance, was said to have turned into a sea. Residents fault the county government for not ensuring the installment of efficient draining systems, as well as the NTSA for not fitting the same across road networks in the city. Transport PS John Mosonik says that authorities are on alert and that engineers in Nairobi and across the country are on standby to clear emergency situations. This as the meteorological department forecasts that the rains will continue well into May.
We have a team here, and you will be actually seeing it that if there is an emergency, and they are going to give you the number, what do you call the emergency number, and this is something again you are going to put to public. You'll see it tomorrow in the papers. Should there be anything, either the road has been washed away and so on, they should be able to report and make sure that we send the closest team actually to those nearest areas. We have one which is normally a bad one, is through Narok Road. We have some also in Mombasa in some areas, and some partly northeastern where the soil actually cannot be able to hold, so they are, as a result, they are washed away.
Sharma Mani, KTN.
Let's now focus on security. Police have arrested a man who works at the Senate after intelligence report indicated that he planned to facilitate an attack on Parliament. Ali Abdul Majid was named as one of Al-Shabaab's spies. Abdul Majid is also said to be affiliated to Pumwani Riyadh Mosque and is suspected to have intended to plant a bomb within Parliament buildings. A letter purported to be from OCPD Central Paul Wanjama called for enhanced surveillance in order to preempt measures planned by the terrorists.
Government officials in Kenya have been known to say some fairly eyebrow-raising stuff, especially on critical national issues. Sometimes we excuse it as politics, and other times we are unable to sweep it under the carpet. After the Garissa University attack, the rhetoric was familiar, with government assuring, promising and making sweeping statements that were simply too far from the reality. Tonight, KTN begins a new segment, On the Record, that raises questions into such utterances. And on the record this evening is Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed, who shocked many by claiming the government response to the Garissa attack was adequate. Here's the first episode of On the Record with KTN's Edith Kimani.
It has been 25 days since gunmen stormed the Garissa University College. The events following that attack have been told and retold, each story containing the number 148. That's, of course, the number of people who died. 4 days after the attack, the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Amina Mohamed, appeared on an international broadcast. And unsurprisingly, a key question was why it took 15 hours to end an attack that was launched by a reported 4 people. This is what she had to say.
The response was adequate, and because of the military garrison that was actually quite close to the university, you know, one cannot actually say that the response was slow.
Adequate. That is the word that she chose, and it is a word which was later heavily quoted all around the world. People could not understand how, given the outcome, the CS could confidently go on record to say the security forces had done a satisfactory job. But listen to this part of that interview where the Foreign Affairs CS goes into more details.
The work began immediately after the attack was reported and continued for a number of hours until we were able to rescue 663 students of the 800 students that had been taken hostage by these terrorists.
Over 600 people saved is by all standards impressive. But if what Amina is saying is correct, that the rescue operation began almost immediately the attack commenced, then why did it take so long to end the siege? And if the response was adequate, why did 148 people lose their lives? Bureaucracy. Now that's the word that we're choosing to use, and one of the possible reasons for that delay. Red tape and hierarchy are blocking communication channels within the police force to a point of hindering effective response by officers. We know from the expose KTN aired a week ago that within the first minutes of the attack, students were fervently calling police on the ground. But how that information gets to the commanding authorities is a long and tedious process, which begins with a simple radio call. Now, the officer who receives the distress call radios a control room. These control rooms are limited to a provincial communication radius. So if a call is made in Garissa, for example, the Nairobi province officers will not have access to that message. In that control room, a duty officer receives the call, and from here, the OCS, who is the person in charge of the police station closest to the scene of distress, is alerted. The OCS then radios his ground teams, who are usually in pre-selected teams, and they're called sectors, which respond to specific crimes. So there might be a sector that deals with carjackings, and in this case, terrorist threats. Now, these sectors cannot move to anyone's calls unless they are ordered to do so. If the threat, as was in Garissa, proves too big, then the county commander is called in. It is the county commander who then gets in touch with the Inspector General of Police. Then the IG calls the Cabinet Secretary for Interior, and they decide what sort of approach will be used. Now, should they agree on an interagency approach involving the military, for example, the CS for Defense is called in, and the CS then informs the Chief of Defense Forces. The CDF will then get in touch with the Army commander at the base closest to the attack to deploy troops. We cannot say for a fact how long that entire process takes, but if you had to go through an average 5 people to get anything done, then chances are it would considerably slow your pace. Now, we also do not know for a fact if the standard operating procedure is used religiously within the police force, or if it was in fact used at the time of the attack. What we do know from an officer who was on duty that day in Garissa is that there was confusion from the onset. The officer told us that his sector was called in to respond to the attack, and immediately it was placed under the command of the OCPD. Now, according to our source, the OCPD was reluctant to give the order to have the officers go into the rescue because he felt there were simply too few. At the same time, our source says that the county commander was calling the OCPD from a different location repeatedly to find out why officers had not made their way into the university. The officer told us while the AP commander was directing the teams to move into the university grounds, the OCPD was not for the idea. There were only 11 police officers under their command and poorly equipped. And in the end, the police officers who were ideally the first response line cordoned off the university and engaged the terrorists in a gunfight for several hours before the rescue squad based in Roiro, which is kilometers away, arrived at the scene. So let's compare this to the French police response to the Charlie Hebdo attack. The key characteristic of the response was the mobilization of 88,150 personnel, 50,000 policemen, 32,000 gendarmes, these are military police, 5,000 police, mobile police, and 1,150 soldiers. See, after a series of attacks, the French government put in place a centralized alert system, which is called the Vigipirate plan. And it is the architecture of the Vigipirate that allows French police forces to have a harmonized response. So where's our Vigipirate, you might ask? We don't have one, unfortunately. Legislation that would allow this to happen has stalled, and there's been no mention to revive it. And yet,
the response was adequate.
The sad reality is that even if the legislation was in place, capacity and limited resources within the police service would probably be a deterrent. Now, according to Air Wing Commander Rogers Mbidi, the entire National Police Service has only 3 working aircrafts. 1 is under maintenance and 8 are beyond economical repair. Now, these 3 aircrafts are meant to provide air support. They're supposed to conduct border patrols, be there for rapid response, and respond to anti-terror in the entire country. 3 aircrafts. There have been efforts to purchase new helicopters, but the tendering process was halted indefinitely, actually just last week, and there are investigations currently ongoing to look into claims of corruption in the procurement of aircrafts and parts, as well as misuse of aircrafts within the service. But that's fine because, well,
the response was adequate.
But wait. There are helicopters at the disposal of other security agencies, so why not use those? especially since in June of 2014, President Uhuru Kenyatta, through an executive order, placed security personnel and equipment of the Kenya Wildlife Service, the Kenya Forest Service, and the Kenya Prison Service, and the National Youth Service under the command of the Inspector General of Police. Now, it gets even better. The order expressly stated that operations of any aircraft owned by government entities, except the Kenya Defence Forces, will be availed to the Inspector General of Police for the purpose of enhancing the country's ability to combat insecurity. The IG himself, together with the CES, used a KWS chopper to get to Garissa, so we know for a fact that the order is being followed. We're just confused why it didn't apply to the rescue squad when they needed transport. But maybe it's okay because
the response was adequate.
Adequate is an adjective that means satisfactory or acceptable in quantity and quality. The response was not adequate because 148 lives were lost. The response was not acceptable because as a country we really ought to have learned from Westgate and Mpeketoni and Mandera bus attack and the Mandera quarry attack and the over 100 attacks that Kenya has had since October 16th, 2011. The response was not adequate because parents are burying their children as the government buries its head in the sand. And by the way, the latest response tactic by the government now seems to be to close any institution at the slightest hint of a terror threat. Adequate is simply not enough.
Good evening and welcome to KTN Business. It has been a trying few weeks for Britam following allegations that its biggest shareholder was running a Ponzi scheme in Mauritius. As a result, the company's shares have taken a beating as investors ran away from the company. But as Adelaide Changole explains, the Mauritian government is moving to ease concerns as it takes a seat on Britam's board.
The Mauritian government has become the newest, largest shareholder at Britam following the resignation and exit of Dawood Rawat from the board of the insurance firm.
Through the national insurance company, now it is the government who's going to be holding the shares. So there's no risk at all.
Rawat relinquished his position following accusations that he was involved in a 63.7 billion shilling Ponzi scheme in Mauritius. This news has led to the takeover of Rawat's bank, Bremer Banking Corporation, with the bank's parent company, British American Investment Company, being put under conservators, ostensibly to protect the interest of policyholders. The scandal has sent ripples all the way to Kenya due to the relationship between some of its directors and Britam. This has seen Britam shares slide 14% this month alone, from 26 shillings at the beginning of April to 22 shillings and 25 cents today, as investors dump the stock to limit the exposure to the unfolding crisis. However, the Mauritian government has come out to reassure investors that there is limited exposure to the crisis in Mauritius.
Kenya is not affected by this at all. Because it's only a 23% holding, and but there's no consolidation or there's no control which is exercised on Britam, on the entity in Kenya. So it is isolated from what has happened here in Mauritius.
But despite this, there is fear that Rawat's assets, including the 23.9% stake in Britam, valued at close to 14 billion shillings, will be liquidated to pay off the affected 23,000 victims of the Ponzi scheme and as many as 160,000 BAI insurance policy holders.
We'll probably have to monetize that investment because policyholders in Mauritius are looking for their capital to be repaid back. And we'll have to convert that very good investment into cash at some stage.
However, given the depressed share prices at the moment, the Mauritian government says it is not in a hurry to dispose of the stock and will instead take a measured approach to ensure shareholders get the maximum possible return.
We have to make sure that serious bidders come to the table. There must be a proper bidding process. That process, I certainly would like to do that in the full transparency of policyholders and of management in Kenya.
The news comes as Britam restated its full-year earnings for the year ended December 2014. According to the statement, pre-tax profit fell from 3.73 billion shillings to 3.2 billion shillings, while after-tax income was adjusted downwards from 2.9 billion shillings to 2.5 billion shillings. Adelaide Chongole, KTN Business.
Thanks, Adelaide. Now, 5 local steel manufacturers have presented bids to supply over 5,000 tons of steel metal to China Road and Bridge Corporation, CRBC, the main contractor of the standard gauge railway. The 5, Apex Steel Mill, Steelmakers, Devki Steel Mills, Prime Steel and Tononoka Steel presented their tenders on Friday, and CRBC is in the process of evaluating the quotations before selecting suitable suppliers based on the stability of their production capacity, good sales performance, excellent quality control, and low price variations. This will be a first large-scale local purchase of steel by CRBC since January, when construction of the 472-kilometer railway began, and with the contractor having shipped in 4,000 tons of metal rail from China. The 5,000 tons of steel, worth an estimated 330 million shillings, is expected to meet construction demand for a period of about 3 months, with CRBC planning another round of procurement towards end of this year. This procurement is expected to calm the nerves of many local manufacturers who have in the past accused CRBC of dismissing locally made cement and steel. And Kenya is set to participate at the 2015 World Expo in Milan as part of its long-term strategy to aggressively market the country as a trade, investment and tourist destination. The Expo, that runs from the 1st of May, has attracted over 150 countries and several international organizations. Speaking during the launch of Kenya's participation, Tourism Cabinet Secretary Phyllis Kandie said the 6-month-long Expo provides an opportunity for both the public and private sector to tap into the larger global market. With the theme, Kenya, the land of unlimited possibilities, Kenya is seeking to boost her export trade and help reduce the current account deficit, which has averaged at 8.1% over the past 4 years.
As an agro-industrial economy, Kenya Pavilion is located within the coffee countries cluster. This is in order to ensure that Kenya maximizes its presence in Milan to expose and promote our export products like coffee, tea, horticulture, captivating tourism attractions, rich art and culture that we have, and also our heritage.
The high cost of land is pushing property developers to move to lowly priced areas in a bid to deliver the much-needed units in demand on the market. In the latest Has Consult Property Index, land prices in Nairobi rose by 17.6% compared to 4.5% last year. The fastest price rises were in Loresho and Ridgeways, where property rose by over 40%. According to the Q1 Index, property prices in upmarket areas such as Runda rose by 0.5%, with Loresho and Ridgeways also recording significant rises. Most interesting is the shift by developers to mid-level suburban areas that never featured prominently on the property radar. Right now, an acre in Donholm is retailing at a whopping 41 million shillings. An acre in Eastleigh is now at about 200 million, and an acre in Ridgeways is selling at 64 million shillings. The new findings seem to suggest that more apartments are in the offing, especially around the densely populated areas.
What areas are coming up in development activity, and those are the ones that will see the highest price rises. So as compared to 5-7 years ago, when you could basically buy land anywhere and it would appreciate at phenomenal amounts. Now it's time to be a bit more discerning about where you buy land, probably not at in the more mature sort of areas, because those have seen sort of very stable increases and probably some sort of leveling off of those prices. I think that's what I would say. If you're investing, that's what you need to look at.
Set up these areas
If you look at the bypasses and bridges, for example, that has really opened up that whole area. If you even look at the diplomatic community as well, it's also creating a lot of buzz around ridgeways, going all the way to Loreto as well. So they're catching up with basically most of the other areas as they open up, as the infrastructure opens up. That area. Yeah.
And that's it that we had for you tonight on KTN Business. Do join me again tomorrow for more business updates. My name is Joy Doreen Bira. Have a good night.
Despite failing to make the World Cross Country Championships team early last month, 5,000 meters Commonwealth champion Mercy Cherono is determined to focus on the season ahead. Cherono is hoping to make the Kenya team to the World Athletics Championships in Beijing, China, where she will be looking into upgrading her world silver medal.
Mercy Cherono is a two-time world junior champion in the 3,000 meters race, as well as a world cross-country junior champion. She's, however, yet to taste world championships glory in the senior ranks. Her plans to bag a world cross-country senior title were thwarted when she failed to make the Kenyan team to the world cross-country championships in Guiyang, China, early this year.
That came out in the trials that I didn't lose over and just working out for the coming world championship.
The 2014 Commonwealth champion in the 5,000 meters race has since shifted training base from Kericho to Eldoret, where she has joined Janet Chepkosgei and Eunice Sum, who have been lucky enough to bask in World Championships glory.
Being with a champion, so it gives you being to be focused and determined on what you are.
Mercy will definitely be the girl to watch in the 5,000 meters race. Now, staying with athletics, despite failing to defend his London Marathon title on Sunday, former world record holder Wilson Kipsang's visit to London this year was special to him. A two-time London Marathon champion who is an ardent Chelsea supporter got an opportunity to tour the Blues' home stadium, Stamford Bridge.
I think it's really a great privilege and honor for me to be at Stamford Bridge, which I've just been seeing the TV guys play, Chelsea team playing, and I've been really dreaming of to come and see live. So I've really moved to see where they change the offices and everything. It's really nice. It's really nice. I'm a Chelsea fan, and many of the times, especially when they're playing, I really try my best to find time to watch these guys. And I've been really, and I like the way that Jose Mourinho has been taking care of the team. They have got the spirit of really winning. In Kenya, you cannot really get a lot of experience to train and prepare so much for football. But I like so much to watch and see how the guys are playing, because it's more tactical, brain game. So it's really such a nice game to watch. I really enjoy coming back to London. London has been like home to me. Many of my races that I've done in London, I've done very well. Bronze in the Olympics, winning twice the London Marathon. It's really nice.
Let's hope that he was not distracted by Jose Mourinho's antics. Now, world marathon record holder Paula Radcliffe announced her retirement from competitive running after competing this year's London Marathon on Sunday, where she clocked a time of 2 hours, 36 minutes and 55 seconds. There was no better place to run her last competitive race than the British capital, where she set a world record time of 2 hours, 15 minutes and 25 seconds that is yet to be broken over 10 years later.
The
London Marathon has been such an important part of my life almost up to this point. It was kind of the inspiration for me to really get started into running as a child, and then to be able to take part in it. It was really where I found my event in 2002. I've got such special memories of 2002, 3 and 5, and then to have the chance to come back today and to be able to experience that out there was something really, really special, because I mean it's something that I'll never ever forget. I've had a lot of fun out there, and it's been a journey, and you meet so many special people, you have so many special experiences, so to try and just introduce as many people as possible to that is something big, I think.
So before we wind up KTN Prime tonight, we take a look at the big question. Tonight it was not a question. We were asking you to share your views on the story, the plague for profit.
Indeed, you're looking for your thoughts on that story. Millicent Nyakemo says, honestly, heads must roll on this one. Atlas does not even begin to describe all who facilitated this, all for the love of money. Kenya, my beloved country, my heart is so broken for your poor, voiceless people.
Joseph Ongera says, crime against humanity, NEMA, owners and stakeholders to operations and licensing should be prosecuted.
Dewa Kenya says, I'm in tears, cursing all the directors and government officials who watched this happen. Mass murder.
And in terms, Nick Nyanja says, sometimes I wonder how a lawyer will defend the rich even after seeing such evidence. Greed, my son.
And finally, Regina Njogu says, I was in tears. Anyone who knew about the matter and did nothing is culpable.
Yeah, many thanks indeed. That is the conversation tonight, plague for profit, and we will re-air that story again tonight following massive public demand. Now, following that documentary, that investigative documentary whose facts have been in the making for 8 years, KTN's John Allanamo and Muhammad Ali bring you evidence of what is one of the most sinister industrial operations to have ever been initiated in recent history, one that has left men, women and children dead, and a community of over 3,000 people in one of the country's most poor neighborhoods suffering as the waste from this industry continues to affect them.
The network of those responsible spans 2 continents and includes foreign businessmen, government agencies and a current member of parliament.
Tonight we bring you Plague for Profit, a story that should have been told years ago, were it not for the fact that the victims here are among Kenya's poorest. That is coming to you after this quick break.